Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today, somewhere inside the National Health Service, a developer is looking at a GitHub repository that was public yesterday and is now private. No announcement, no press conference, just a deadline, quietly enforced, that went into effect this morning, and the reason it happened is a single AI model. On April 29th, NHS England circulated an internal document called Guidance Note SDLC8. The document did not make headlines the day it was distributed. It was leaked to the public by Terence Eden, a former senior technology advisor who helped publish the NHS COVID-19 contact tracing app during the pandemic. Eden was contacted by multiple sources inside the NHS, who were, in his words, aghast at the decision. The guidance reads in part that public repositories materially increase the risk of unintended disclosure of source code, architectural decisions, configuration detail, and contextual information that may be exploited, particularly given rapid advancements in AI models capable of large-scale code ingestion, inference, and reasoning. And then it names the specific model the NHS is afraid of, Anthropic's Mythos. The deadline for compliance was today, May 11th. Teams wanting to keep a repository public had to submit a formal exemption request to the NHS Engineering Board by May 6th. Any repository that did not receive an exemption has been switched to private. No end date has been given for when the restriction will be lifted. To understand why this feels significant, you have to understand what the NHS's open source policy actually was. For years, the NHS followed UK government guidance stating that code built with public money should be made publicly available. The logic was straightforward. Taxpayers funded the development, so the public should benefit from it. Other organizations could reuse the work and avoid duplicating effort. And transparency allowed more developers to spot and fix vulnerabilities faster. That policy was not just a guideline. It was written into the UK government's Technology Code of Practice, point 3 of which explicitly mandates that public sector organizations be open and use open source. The NHS had hundreds of public repositories, front-end design systems, internal tools, data pipelines, patient-facing apps, research tools. Some were actively maintained and widely reused. That infrastructure of public code took a decade to build. NHS England has now suspended the entire policy, effective today, without a public consultation, without a parliamentary debate, because of an AI model that its own national cybersecurity bodies did not recommend acting against. The quiet removal of NHS open source policy pages from its website back in December 2025 turned out to be the first signal. SDLC8, issued April 29, was the follow-through. The UK AI Safety Institute and the National Cybersecurity Centre were not the ones who told the NHS to do this. Eden confirmed that neither body recommended the move. The decision came entirely from within NHS England's own engineering board, triggered by Anthropic's April 7th announcement of Project Glasswing and the Mythos model. Mythos, as Anthropic described it, is an AI capable of autonomously finding zero-day vulnerabilities across major operating systems and browsers at a scale no human team could match. It found a 17-year-old remote code execution vulnerability in FreeBSD. It discovered a 27-year-old flaw in OpenBSD, a system famous for its security record. It chained together 4 browser vulnerabilities into a single working exploit. NHS England read that announcement and concluded that leaving their code public was no longer tenable. Now pause there, because on the surface, that reaction seems reasonable. Anthropic built something powerful enough to scare the Federal Reserve and the UK Financial Conduct Authority in the same week. If a healthcare system is running software with vulnerabilities and a frontier AI can find those vulnerabilities in hours, it makes sense to reduce the attack surface. So why are so many people furious about this? Because the security logic does not actually hold up. Terence Eden, who published the leaked guidance and has spent years working on public sector transparency and digital policy, made the core argument simply: the NHS's code has been publicly available for years. It was ingested by AI training datasets. It has been archived by digital libraries. It has been backed up by individuals. Closing the repositories today does not remove the code from the world. It removes it from a convenient URL. Anyone who wanted to analyze it already has it or can get it. Eden's conclusion was blunt. If Mythos really is the ultimate hacker, hiding the code now does nothing. It has likely already retained copies of the repositories. Beyond the futility argument, there is the question of what NHS England's code actually contains. Eden reviewed the public repositories and described them as mostly datasets, internal tools, guidance, research tools, front-end design and the like. He said there is nothing in them which could realistically lead to a security incident. He pointed to the COVID contact tracing app as direct evidence. That app was installed on millions of phones, deliberately open-sourced from day one, subject to scrutiny from hostile state actors, and produced zero security incidents. The NHS closed its code over a risk scenario that its own recent history says is overstated. There is also a perverse irony in the security argument itself. Open source advocates, including the petition currently gathering signatures on Keep Things Open, argue that public code is harder to keep insecure, not easier to attack. Maintainers must meet a higher standard. Vulnerabilities are spotted by a wider community. The Horizon IT scandal, where a closed, opaque NHS IT system led to hundreds of wrongful post office prosecutions because nobody outside could scrutinize what was happening inside, is the counter-argument to closed-source public infrastructure. Forcing code private does not just reduce an attack surface, it removes the immune system that community scrutiny provides. Saif Abed, founding partner of cybersecurity advisory firm Abed Graham, landed in the middle. He called SDLC 8 a sensible temporary step considering the rapidly changing threat landscape, but immediately added that he would expect a transparent and publicly funded assessment of the actual threat Mythos poses to NHS systems, followed by a concrete mitigation strategy. What he did not want was a blanket closure with no timeline and no published rationale. That is what the NHS has delivered. The Government AI Security Institute's own evaluation of Mythos reached a more measured conclusion than the NHS's reaction implies. The model is primarily effective against small, weakly defended systems. That is a notable caveat that did not make it into SDLC 8. And there is a broader implication here that matters beyond the NHS. The UK government's tech code of practice has just been overridden, without any public process or parliamentary scrutiny, by an internal engineering memo from a single public body. If NHS England can suspend open source requirements unilaterally in response to a threat assessment that its own national cybersecurity bodies did not endorse, any public sector organization can do the same. Cal.com, the popular open-source scheduling platform, made the same call in April, citing the same threat. The European Union, meanwhile, has been moving in the exact opposite direction, with several member states now mandating open source for public sector software as a condition of digital sovereignty. As the UK closes its code, Brussels is opening it. If frontier AI models become the standard justification for closing public code, the architecture of open-source public infrastructure built over decades can be dismantled organization by organization with no accountability, no timeline, and no mechanism for the public to appeal. Terence Eden told people to email their MPs. He filed a Freedom of Information request. He called the decision retrograde and said he hoped the NHS would see sense and reverse course. The open letter has attracted hundreds of signatures. NHS England, for its part, has said the restrictions are temporary, and that it will continue to publish code where there is a clear need. No timeline, no definition of clear need, no public criteria for when the repositories go back. Today's deadline is not really a story about the NHS, it is a story about what happens when a single AI capability announcement is powerful enough to reverse a decade of public sector transparency policy inside 34 days, without a public debate, without the endorsement of national security bodies, and with a justification that experts say may not even work. One AI model, still locked behind a restricted access program, shifted the default posture of a public institution that serves 56 million people, not by being deployed against it, not by finding a single vulnerability in its code. Mythos didn't have to hack the NHS to change it, it just had to exist. Thanks for watching. This is AI Tides, and I'll see you in the next one.